Dust choked the canyon, thick as smoke from hell's own fire. A wagon lay shattered in the gulch below, wheels splintered, canvas burning. Buzzards circled overhead, their shadows twisting across broken bodies. And then movement. A hand clawed out from under the wreckage, trembling, slick with blood. A man dragged himself into the open, gasping, whispering a single word. Girl. Boot prints scarred the ground, leading into the jagged hills. Small, hurried steps marked where someone had been taken. The trail was fresh, the danger closer still. Above it all, a lone rider reined his horse to a halt. His eyes swept the ruin, hand resting on cold iron. Somewhere in the desert, the hunt had already begun. This is WestDream Tale, where the spirit of the Wild West rides again. Here, every tale is forged in dust, danger, and the fight for redemption. If the opening left you breathless, stay, because this story is only just beginning. The sun bled low across the desert, turning the dust the color of rust. A lone rider moved along the trail, each hoofbeat a steady drum. His name was Cole Harrington, a cowboy who trusted silence more than men. The smell reached him first, burned canvas and cordite riding the wind. Cole slowed, palm resting on the worn grip of his revolver. Ahead, thin smoke curled from a shallow valley. He eased forward and the ground opened to ruin. A wagon train lay shattered, wheels splintered, trunks gutted, bodies sprawled like broken shadows. Buzzards wheeled in black arcs over the wreck. Cole dismounted, boots crunching, glassy grit. Laughter and prayer had lived here an hour ago. Now only flies spoke. He scanned the scene, careful, patient, listening for the wrong kind of breath. Valuables glittered here and there, a silver locket, a brass clock face. Whoever hit this train took what they wanted and left what they could carry later. That meant they might still be close. A sound cut through the heat, a wet, torn whisper. Cole pivoted, gun up, eyes hunting edges in shadow. Movement scraped beneath an overturned coach. A man dragged himself through the dirt, blood soaking his shirt. Dust masked his face, but the will to live burned behind his eyes. Cole knelt, revolver steady in his other hand. Easy, Cole said, voice low and even. You're not dead yet. The man's lips trembled, trying to form sense from pain. The girl, save the girl, he rasped. Cole leaned closer. Whose girl? The man swallowed, breath hitching. Sarah. Davies. Cole's gaze shifted past the wagons to the trail's edge. Small prints cut the dust quick, staggered, half-dragged alongside heavy boot tracks. A strip of pale fabric fluttered from a broken spoke, torn clean, faint perfume clinging to it. Someone left here alive, and someone else meant to keep her that way for ransom, or worse. Cole felt the trail tighten around his ribs. He pulled a canteen, tilting a thin stream to the man's mouth. The stranger drank, coughed, and clutched at Cole's wrist. What's your name? Cole asked. The answer came thin as thread. Ethan Mallory. Cole watched the wound a deep groove along the ribs. Ugly but survivable if luck held. This wasn't a man shot to finish. It was a man meant to crawl. Cole's eyes swept the ground again. Boot ruts fanned toward the north ridge. Not at a gallop, at a working pace. No hurry. No fear of pursuit. Trap or not, the sign for Sarah Davies was written plain in the dust. Cole weighed the choice like a coin he'd spent too many times. Ride on and live easy, or take the hard way for a girl he'd never met. He holstered the gun. Ethan, I'm getting you up, and we're moving. The man nodded once, jaw clenched against the pain. Cole rigged a blanket drag and hauled Ethan from the heat-baked ground. Every inch groaned with the wreck's complaints, twisted iron, charred timber, the hush of the newly dead. He didn't look long at faces. The living came first. He stripped the scene for what mattered: half a water skin, a tin of cartridges, a knife with a straight spine. The lantern was cracked, but the flint would spark. Not much, but enough to make a start. Cole lifted Ethan into the saddle and cinched him close to the horn. The horse shifted, snorted, then settled beneath the extra weight. Stay conscious, Cole said. Talk if you can. Quiet if you can't. Ethan's fingers gripped leather, white at the knuckles. Caleb, he whispered, as if the name itself were a wound. "Who's Caleb?" Cole asked. Ethan's eyes slid toward the north, unfocused and afraid. "Cousin, bad men, took Sarah." His head sagged, but he held on. Cole's gaze chased the horizon. A thin column of dust wavered far off, too straight to be wind. Riders, counting their spoils or circling back to count again? "Time's done," Cole muttered. He swung up behind Ethan and gathered the reins. The horse stepped out, wary, ready to run if the world snapped. They left the valley to its dead. Shadows lengthened, bleeding into stone and brush, swallowing the worst of what had happened. The air cooled, but the trail felt hotter with every sign in the sand. Cole kept them low in the wash, riding where stone hid their outline. He marked the small prints when they crossed light, stubborn, refusing to vanish. Sarah Davies was still fighting the ground. At the cut in the ridge, he reined in and listened. No voices, no metal, no careless laugh, only wind and the soft rasp of Ethan's breath. "You follow a girl's trail," Ethan murmured, half delirious. Why? Cole stared into the narrowing light. "Because somebody has to," he said, "and because men who take what they want don't stop until somebody stops them." He clicked his tongue and set the horse moving again. Behind them, smoke thinned to nothing and the day folded in on itself. Ahead, night stacked like cards at the mouth of the gulch. Cole rode into it, carrying a man named Ethan Mallory and the name Sarah Davies like a promise he intended to keep. The wagon train moved steady across the plains. Wheels creaked, oxen groaned, and voices carried on the wind. For those who followed Jonathan Davies, this was not just a journey, it was the promise of a new beginning. Davies rode tall on his chestnut horse, a merchant by trade, a leader by nature. He guided 30 souls westward toward hope. His wealth paid for wagons, guards, and supplies, but his true treasure rode beside him, his daughter Sarah. Sarah was 20, spirited and sharp. Her laughter broke the monotony of long days. When nights fell, she read by firelight, her voice carrying across the camp like music. Among the workers was Ethan Mallory. He kept to himself, dark-eyed and lean, with calloused hands that knew hard labor. Most saw him as another hired man, nothing more. But Sarah saw him differently. She noticed how he fixed broken wheels without complaint, how he guided animals through mud and rain. Sometimes she slowed her buggy to speak with him. "Do you ever tire of the road?" she asked one afternoon. Ethan glanced up, surprised, before answering softly. "Tired or not, the road doesn't care. You walk it, or it leaves you behind." Sarah smiled at his plain wisdom. "You sound older than you look," she teased, and he flushed, unused to her attention. Moments like these fed a quiet fire inside him. At the campfires, she joined him with questions others never asked. What did he dream of? Did he believe in luck? Ethan stumbled through answers, but each word tied him tighter to her. It was dangerous, that tether. He knew she was Davy's daughter, far above him. But when her eyes lingered on his face, he couldn't help but imagine. That imagination became weakness. Weakness opened the door to temptation, and temptation arrived in the shape of his cousin Caleb. One evening, while the wagons rested near a dry creek bed, Ethan slipped away for water. In the shadows beyond camp, a figure waited. Caleb stepped forward, wearing a smirk as sharp as any knife. "Well, if it isn't my kin," Caleb drawled. "Still breaking your back for another man's fortune?" Ethan stiffened, his voice low. "What are you doing here, keeping an eye on easy money?" Caleb said. "These wagons carry more gold than you'll ever see, but a frontal strike will cost me blood. That's where you come in." Ethan's stomach nodded, but Caleb wasn't finished. His cousin leaned close, eyes glinting in the moonlight. "You work close to Davies. You know where he keeps the rifles, when the guards rotate, where he plans to rest. With that, we take them before they blink." Ethan hesitated, silent, but Caleb pressed harder. "And don't think I don't see it," Caleb sneered. "The way you look at his girl. You want her, don't deny it." Ethan's silence betrayed him more than words could. Caleb's grin widened. "She talks to you, doesn't she? Makes you believe you matter? But you and I know her father would never let you near her." The truth stung, harder than any insult. "I can fix that for you," Caleb continued. "My men strike, Take the gold. In the chaos, she lives. Because you make sure she's in the right place, you'll be the one at her side, pulling her to safety. And with Davies gone, nobody stands in your way. Ethan's chest tightened. His cousin's words slithered like snakes, coiling around every fear, every desire he'd tried to bury. Davies gone, Ethan whispered, horrified. Caleb shrugged. Accidents happen in ambushes. You can't save everyone, but you can save her. Imagine it, she'll cling to you. Believe you're her savior. No more shame. No more hunger. Ethan shook his head, voice unsteady. She can't be hurt. Caleb's grin hardened. Then keep her close and give me what I need. When the wagons stop, when the guards change, when Davies leads them into the canyon, you'll see that she walks away. That's the deal. The night stretched silent between them. Ethan thought of Sarah's laughter, her questions, the way she made him feel human. He thought of Davies, proud and unbending, the wall he could never climb. Caleb's hand clamped his shoulder. This is your chance. Don't waste it. Without you, I fight blind. With you, it's clean, fast, and you walk away with the girl. The grip was iron, dragging him toward a choice he didn't want to make. Ethan's heart pounded. He saw two roads, one where he stayed a nameless worker, forgotten by Sarah, and another where fire and blood cleared the path. The second road glimmered with everything he wanted and everything he feared. Finally, his head dipped in a slow, tortured nod. I'll tell you what you need, he muttered. Caleb's smile spread like a wolf's. That's all I needed to hear, his cousin said. Keep her close. When the smoke clears, she'll be yours. The gold will be mine. He stepped back into the shadows, leaving Ethan trembling. Ethan remained by the creek long after Caleb vanished. The water reflected his face, twisted with doubt and shame. He had chosen, though part of him screamed against it. When he returned to camp, Sarah waved at him from the firelight. Her smile was warm, unguarded, filled with trust. Ethan forced himself to smile back, though his chest burned like coal. She invited him to sit beside her, offering bread from her plate. Tomorrow we cross the canyon, she said. Father says it's the hardest stretch, but once through, the worst is behind us. Ethan nodded, the bread turning to ash in his mouth. He wanted to tell her everything, to confess the trap he'd stepped into, but her faith in him made the words impossible. As the fire crackled, he looked at her and knew his choice was sealed. Greed and desire had chained him tighter than any rope. Whatever came next, he had already betrayed them all. The night held its silence like a loaded gun. Cole Harrington kept the fire low, watching the man he had dragged from the wreck. Ethan Mallory sat hunched, his face cut by shadow, his hands trembling against the earth. At first, Cole thought it was pain, but pain makes men curse, not whisper. Ethan's silence was heavier, as if every breath carried a secret he couldn't swallow. Cole had seen this before. Survivors with eyes that looked past the flames, not because of what they'd lost, but because of what they'd done. And now he knew the man in front of him was not simply a victim of outlaws. Ethan began to speak in fragments. Words spilled without shape, memories breaking loose despite his will. Cole let him talk, saying nothing. The firelight bearing witness. He told of Sarah Davies, daughter of the merchant who had led the train. Her voice had been the music of the road, her laughter stronger than dust or thirst. To Ethan, each glance she gave had felt like a gift he didn't deserve. That small kindness grew into something dangerous. He convinced himself her smiles meant more than they were. And in that illusion, a man like Caleb saw opportunity. Caleb Mallory was Ethan's cousin, older, harder, raised on a creed of taking. He appeared one night beyond the fire, his words soft as poison, his grin sharper than any knife. He spoke of the wagons heavy with gold, and of Sarah, who could be made his. The memory burned Ethan even as he spoke it aloud. Caleb promised the girl would be spared, promised Ethan would be her savior in the chaos. All it would cost was a word, a detail, the crack in the caravan's armor. Ethan had given it. He told Caleb the day they would cross the canyon, the hour the guards grew tired, the place the wagons could be slowed. That single betrayal lit the fuse for everything that followed. Cole listened without moving. The words were not excuses, but facts. falling like stones into a pit already dug. The truth had the weight of inevitability. Ethan described the ambush as if it still tore through his ribs. The whistle short, then two quick rose from the ravine like a ghost. Shadows burst into riders, rifles raised, the canyon walls alive with fire. Sarah had fought. She had seized a shotgun and fired into the air, buying precious moments with her defiance. Her courage had been as bright as the muzzle flash, and just as brief. Jonathan Davies had stood like a wall before his people. He swung his rifle like a club, struck down one rider, and turned against another. He fought not as a merchant, but as a father who knew what he was about to lose. And then Caleb revealed himself. He rode through smoke with a smile, his pistol already aimed at the girl. For Ethan, the promise collapsed in that single instant. He remembered shouting, reminding Caleb of their deal. Caleb only laughed, the sound colder than steel. He pulled the trigger, and the bullet tore into Ethan instead. The world twisted in blood and dust. Ethan fell beneath the wagon, his body crushed by pain, his ears filled with screams. Through it all, he saw Sarah dragged away, kicking, fighting, clawing at her captors. Jonathan Davies found him in those final moments. The merchant's chest was torn with holes, his breath shallow, his eyes aflame. He looked at Ethan with the clarity of a man who understood betrayal and still chose to hope. Davies had not cursed him. Instead, he had forced one truth into his hands: save her. It was the last command of a dying father to the man who had doomed them all. Ethan's voice cracked as he remembered it. He had crawled through mud slick with blood, reaching for Sarah's cries as they faded into the night. Then the pistol came down across his skull, and the world went black. When he woke, the wagons burned around him. Bodies lay scattered, twisted in death. Only silence and smoke remained, and Sarah was gone. Now, at the fire. Ethan finished his confession. His face was pale, his shoulders hunched, but the truth had bled out of him at last. He had betrayed them all for a promise that was never real. Cole sat with the words. He had chased outlaws long enough to know lies when he heard them. This was not a lie. This was the kind of truth that left scars deeper than wounds. The cowboy's jaw tightened. He knew now that the girl lived, taken north toward Dry Fork, where men sold hope like cattle. He also knew that without Ethan, the trail would vanish into the desert. Ethan had become both the cause of ruin and the key to salvation. His guilt was written into every breath, but so too was knowledge roots, signals, faces. Cole would need that knowledge if he wanted to reach Sarah before it was too late. The night thinned, the fire guttering into coals. Ethan slumped, exhausted, haunted, whispering Sarah's name as if it might summon her back. Cole watched him and weighed the cost. He tied Ethan's wrist with rawhide, firm but not cruel. The man had confessed, but desperation made men reckless, and Cole trusted rope more than regret. Ethan accepted it without protest, his eyes hollow but resolute. When dawn came, it painted the desert in silver light. The smoke of the destroyed wagons had vanished into the sky, leaving no sign of mercy. Cole mounted his horse and pulled Ethan up behind him, turning toward the tracks that led north. The cowboy said nothing as they rode. There was no need. The weight of Ethan's betrayal hung heavier than words. The desert stretched before them, merciless and wide, but in its silence lay the path to truth, to confrontation, and to the last chance for redemption. For Sarah Davies was still alive, and Caleb Mallory had not yet learned what it meant to be hunted. The sun rose red, as if it had borrowed its light from spilled blood. Cole Harrington rode north with Ethan bound behind him, following the faint trail cut into the sand. Each hoofbeat carried them closer to Dry Fork, and closer to the reckoning waiting there. The desert gave way to broken stone. Canyons split the earth like open wounds, and the air grew heavy with silence. Here was land where men vanished, and only bones came back. By noon they reached the chimneys of rock. The old adobe ruin clung to the ridge above a shallow waterhole, its walls half collapsed, its roof long gone. It was the kind of place outlaws favored, hidden, defendable, and already forgotten by honest folk. Cole reined in and studied the ground. Tracks scarred the dust, fresh and deep. Ethan whispered hoarsely that Caleb's men were inside, resting before moving Sarah at nightfall. Cole's eyes narrowed. He saw rope marks on stone, Signs of a bridge dragged across the wash. The hideout was alive, waiting. They left the horse in shadow and climbed. Cole forced Ethan ahead, rawhide still tight around his wrists. Every step was a test of will, each breath filled with the scent of dust and danger. From the rim they looked down into the ruin. Sarah Davies was there, her wrists bound, her face streaked with dirt but still fierce with defiance. She stood surrounded by Caleb and 5 men, their laughter coarse, their guns close. The sight hollowed Ethan's chest. He had imagined saving her, imagined being her shield, but the truth pressed on him like a stone he had put her there. Now only blood could balance the ledger. Cole studied the angles. The crumbled wall offered cover. The shadows of the chimneys masked their approach. But the numbers were against them, and a single mistake would mean Sarah's death. He cut Ethan's bonds but kept the revolver steady. "You walk first," he said, his voice low and hard. Ethan nodded, his face pale, yet his eyes carried the weight of a man with nothing left to lose. They slipped down the ridge, moving from rock to rock. Loose stones shifted, but luck held, and no heads turned. The ruin drew closer, its broken walls rising like jagged teeth. Inside, Caleb's voice carried. He spoke of buyers in Dry Fork, of silver traded for beauty, of Sarah's value like she were cargo. Each word was a nail driven deeper into Ethan's heart. Then Caleb mentioned Ethan's name. He laughed as he told Sarah that her would-be protector had been the one who betrayed them. The words struck like a whip, and Sarah's face broke with shock. She did not scream. She stared at the ground, lips tight, shoulders trembling. Her silence was worse than any curse. Ethan nearly faltered, but Cole's hand on his arm steadied him. The cowboy's eyes said only one thing: not yet. Timing was everything, and timing had not arrived. They crept to the edge of the broken wall. The outlaws lounged inside, rifles close, pistols loose in their belts. Caleb leaned against the wall, his grin the same as on the day he spun the first lie. The cowboy raised his revolver. The crack split the ruin, echoing like thunder. One outlaw fell before his hand touched iron. Chaos erupted. Men scrambled for cover, guns barking, dust rising in choking clouds. Sarah dropped to the ground, rolling behind a toppled beam as bullets shattered stone above her. Cole moved like a shadow, his revolver spitting fire, his steps measured and merciless. He dropped a second man, then a third, his aim cutting through the storm. But the odds still pressed hard. Too many barrels, too little cover. Ethan threw himself into the fight. He had no gun, only a knife pulled from Cole's saddle. He charged at Caleb, rage and shame driving him forward. Steel met steel as Caleb swung his cut-down rifle like a club. The cousins crashed into the dirt, each strike fueled by years of bitterness. Ethan fought not to win Sarah's love, but to kill the lie he had once believed. Sarah seized her moment. She crawled to the body of a fallen outlaw and wrenched free his pistol. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steady as she fired into the melee. The shot grazed another outlaw's shoulder, sending him spinning. The distraction gave Cole his chance. He rose from cover and cut the man down before he could recover. The ruin thundered with violence. Dust stung the air. Cries mingled with gunfire. The ground slick with blood. It was a storm with no direction, only survival. At the center, Ethan and Caleb fought like wolves. Caleb sneered at every strike, mocking Ethan's weakness, his betrayal, his foolish hope. But Ethan pressed harder, knife flashing, teeth clenched. He remembered Davy's eyes in the dust, the command to save Sarah. That memory gave him strength no lie could steal. With a roar, he drove the blade home. Caleb's grin faltered. The knife sank deep, and his laughter died in a wet gasp. He crumpled to the earth, his shadow finally broken. Ethan staggered, blood soaking his side from Caleb's blows. He dropped the knife, his body swaying like a man already half gone. But Sarah was free, alive, and standing. The last outlaw fled into the canyons. His courage burned away. Silence fell heavy over the ruin, broken only by the echo of retreating hoofbeats. Cole lowered his revolver, his chest heaving. Sarah rushed to her father's betrayer. Her hands hovered, torn between fury and mercy, her face wet with tears. Ethan met her eyes, his voice barely a whisper. "I wanted to save you. I failed, but at the end I tried." His words faltered, but the truth was clear. Whatever love he had dreamed was gone. Yet the final act was his redemption. Cole watched, saying nothing. He knew battles like these never ended clean. What mattered was that Sarah still stood, breathing, against the ruin of her world. The desert wind swept through the broken walls, carrying away the last of the gun smoke. Ethan collapsed, Sarah kneeling beside him, her tears falling into the dust. Cole turned his gaze north, where the horizon promised only more miles of silence. The fight was done, but the cost would weigh on all of them long after the desert forgot their footprints. The ruin lay quiet, the last smoke drifting into the canyon wind. Bodies cooled in the dust, their guns silent at last. Only 3 souls remained standing, where once there had been many. Ethan Mallory leaned against the wall, blood soaking through his torn shirt. His breath rattled, shallow and uneven, every rise of his chest weaker than the last. Sarah knelt beside him, her face streaked with dirt and tears. He pressed something into her hands, a folded scrap hidden against his ribs. It was stained, edges brittle, but the lines of her father's map could still be read. "The last thing he gave me," Ethan whispered. "It belongs to you." Sarah clutched it, her hands trembling. "He trusted you, even after she began," but her voice broke under the weight of grief. Ethan's eyes closed, and a faint smile crossed his lips. "I betrayed him," he said, words slow and cracked, but he was right. Saving you is all that mattered. His gaze softened as he looked at her one final time. "You'll live. That's enough." The last breath left him, slipping into the silence like a shadow. For Ethan Mallory, redemption had come only at the edge of death. Sarah bowed her head, her tears falling into the dust where his body rested. Yet even through sorrow, there was no hatred left in her eyes. He had chosen wrong once, but in the end, he had chosen her. Cole Harrington watched in silence. He had seen many men die, but not many who managed to change the story of their lives in the final chapter. He tipped his hat, a quiet gesture of respect to the fallen. Together, he and Sarah dug a shallow grave among the stones. The desert gave no softness, but they laid Ethan to rest with care. Cole carved his name into a plank from the broken ruin, setting it at the head of the mound. When it was done, Sarah stood back, dust clinging to her skirt. "He was lost," she said softly, "but not forgotten." Her words hung in the air, neither absolution nor condemnation, only truth. Cole saddled the horse, helping her climb into the saddle with steady hands. They rode away from Dry Fork, leaving death behind them. The road stretched empty, but ahead, the horizon glowed with the light of possibility. As they traveled, Sarah spoke of her father's dream. He had wanted the gold not only for wealth, but for a legacy, a school, a place where children could grow with knowledge instead of fear. She vowed to use what was left to build that dream. It would be her way of honoring both her father and the man who had given his last breath to save her. Cole listened, the weight in his chest easing for the first time in years. By the time they reached the next town, the sky was deep with evening. Cole helped Sarah down, her strength steady though her heart was scarred. They had survived the fire, and now it was time to build from the ashes. For Sarah Davies, the journey forward carried hope. For Cole Harrington, it carried a reminder that even in betrayal, men could find redemption. And as the desert stretched endless before them, Cole rode on with the quiet strength of hope at his side. And that was tonight's story from WestDream Tales. If it stirred something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next ride into the frontier. But I want to know, where are you listening from right now? Are you out under the stars, in the quiet of your room, or somewhere far from the prairie winds? Share it in the comments below. And if you carry a story maybe passed down through your family, or one you've always wondered about, tell it to us. It may just echo here in our next tale. Until then, ride safe, dream westward, and remember, legends never die. They become WestDream Tales.